So a recurring theme on the show has been looking for a worthy adversary to go up against the Justice League and deserve their attention, and we may have found it in this episode with magic. And the ultimate linchpin, turning Martian Manhunter against the Justice League. Let's talk about it.
What's this all about?
Hello friends, welcome back to the show. So glad to see you once again. And today we're going to be talking about the episode A Night of Shadows, taking us back to the Middle Ages a little bit and introducing magic, bringing magic into the game a little bit with versus the Justice League. And I think this really turns out to be a good adversary for the Justice League. But before we get into all that, I'm going to give you my 90-second rundown, explain the synopsis of the whole episode in 90 seconds or less. Let's go. So the cold open starts out in the Middle Ages, and we see a witch and her son trying to invade this castle, and with the help of who we find out is Jason Blood, who becomes Etrigan, and we get a little bit of his backstory with Merlin and Arthur and all that. And then we fast forward to modern day, and we see that this old man is wheeled out of this thing, and Batman's going to investigate, and he sees his old friend Jason Blood, Etrigan, who is now explaining who this Lethe is and why she's coming back, and she's going to raise a castle for her son, but they need this philosopher's stone. So then this quest goes of who can get there first, the Justice League or her, and they find the stone. The two architects who were at the castle, and one of them is elderly, and the other one has become this ultra-rich Hugh Hefner type person. Hickman, I think his name is, and then they, Wonder Woman and Flash are there, and they're trying to protect him, and then she shows up, and meanwhile, we have this little story with Martian Manhunter, who gets invaded in her mind with by the witch, and sees his life on Mars and his wife and his kid, and she convinces him to bring the stone to her. So what they think ends up happening was that they got the stone secured, and then all is well, but then Martian Manhunter takes the stone to her, and if that succeeds, then everything is gone. She raises the castle out of the ground, they fight in a battle, and then it's ultimately his willpower that saves the day. Not bad.
Yeah, who knew?
All right, so unfortunately, what usually happens is when I'm able to successfully complete the 90-second rundown, it usually means there's not much substance in the episode. And as we talk about that, I'll explain more in depth about that. But it seems to be a recurring theme that some of these two-part episodes may not need to be two parts. And this may be the case. Although it starts off with a great cold open in the Middle Ages, Merlin, Arthur, Camelot, really cool, and it gives us a little bit of a backstory to Jason Blood, which I don't think we've seen in animated form, and that's always fun. I like a good Middle Ages story. I was always a big fan of that. Does anybody remember, what was the cartoon around this time, maybe a little before, was King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table or something like that, but it was like a modern day teenager football team that gets transported back to the Middle Ages and becomes King Arthur, and they put on the helmets, I think, and then I love that show. I gotta look that up. That was I enjoyed that. I think it may only last one season, but that was another one that was just like, they don't make shows like that anymore. Anyway, I digress. This starts out in the Middle Ages and is a lot of fun, and it introduces magic into a Justice League story, which really I think is the right flavor for what they need to go up against this superhero team of the Justice League.
Perceptive, isn't he? Lay off, gruesome.
And it really sets up this nice, simple plot. We have a mother and her child, she happens to be a witch, but is motivated to try to get her son in the castle, to be king of the castle as he rightfully deserves. I don't know if they really go into a lot of what the motivation is, but I get that. And it's different than, oh, we just want money or riches or whatever. It's motivated by, in fact, later on with the Hugh Hefner character, we'll talk about that, how they kind of tie into that of like what his motivations were versus what Lethe's motivations are.
Money and women?
What else is there?
So I like that. It's nice and simple. And I think the transition is really solid, where it starts out with Batman investigating this, doing what he does best, being a detective, and it really starts off as a Batman episode. And we see Jason Blood come in, and him talking to Batman and working out what's going on and why this is happening. And it's really a nice setup until she attacks, and then Batman goes, I think we're gonna need help, and then they call in the Justice League. What a great setup. That's how these episodes should go, is if it starts off with one character, why do we need to include the Justice League and establishing a great threat, which in this case is magic. Etrigan is an integral character in this, which kind of partners with the Justice League to achieve this mission. It's all a great setup. Now, there's a couple of elements in this story that I think could have been trimmed up and I think could have been condensed into one episode.
This is gonna get messy.
I have mixed feelings about, because it could have been a bigger focus in the episode and could have expelled out, but what they did with it wasn't a lot. The first one is this whole searching for the stone thing. They established two characters were archaeologists at the castle. They're surviving members, so obviously one of them probably has the stone.
But I think you have something I want.
And what might that be?
They go on this wild goose chase with one of them, and he doesn't have it, and he's on his deathbed and doesn't know anything about it, this humble old man. Great. So we did that, we established that, narrowed it down, it's gotta be the other guy, but then they do it again, where the witch goes there and Martian Manhunter impersonating the guy, and it's just like it didn't, once was enough, or condensing those into one.
I am truly sorry.
The other element, which I think could have been a bigger focus if they would have done it right, was this weakness of Martian Manhunter, where she evades his mind, she's a telepath, but stronger than him, great threat, great, kind of battle of wits, if you will. And she goes into his mind and pulls out these memories of his life on Mars and his wife and his kids and convinces him to help her because of that vision. They spend a lot of time with that, and I think that's great motivation for the character and creates an internal threat to the Justice League, because Martian Manhunter is a very powerful being. So rather than knocking him out of commission like they do with Superman a lot of times, they turned him to the dark side, to the evil side, with good motivation. It wasn't just a mind control, oh, he's a zombie, he's being controlled.
Zombie kill.
No, play.
Zombie file grievance.
But it's like they motivate him with loss of his family. What a great motivation. So they spend a lot of time with that. I don't feel like it goes quite far enough. They do bring it back around in a full circle at the end, but that I think could have been trimmed up or lean into it more. There were some great emotional moments where he sees his kids and all of that that could have really been a bigger focus of the episode, and it wasn't. But I do like how the story feels sort of wrapped up. Halfway through the second episode, it feels concluded. They get the stone, it's back in the watchtower, we're all safe, everything's good, everything is secured. Etrigan has his hesitations and not sure and doesn't quite trust the Martian Manhunter, and then it's revealed that she got to him again and pulls him away. He takes the ship, takes the stone, and goes to her. So I like that kind of false ending where you're going, wait a minute, it's all wrapped up a little bit too quickly, what's gonna happen next? And then you find out that he indeed had turned to her, and now this is a greater threat. This is what Etrigan had warned them against all along.
Any more questions?
Then she puts these orcs in there for them to face, which is just a distraction to be able to tie them up while she's luring the Martian Manhunter there. What I do think is odd, though, is that she's able to raise the castle there, I think she's in London, without the stone. I don't know why she didn't do that a while ago, but she needs the stone to carry it on. That was a little confusing to me. But in either case, he's coming there. Then we have this nice full circle that I alluded to, where because of his love of his family, that he thinks he's helping them and thinks he's getting back to them. And she's more powerful than he is mentally or telepathically, I guess. And that's what a great threat.
This is my last chance for happiness.
And the magic that they utilize in that is really pretty powerful. Now, going back to the orc battle, I do like the use of freezing them and flash creating that tornado. That's kind of a cool moment. Yes, it's a battle, but it's a battle that was, the purpose of that was just to distract them. Obviously, they were going to be able to fight them and battle them. Meanwhile, the real plot is unfolding down in London, I think, at the castle anyway. And we get to see how LaFay is literally just using her magic and her telepathic powers to try to get this stone and not just brute force. It isn't just a battle of punching. And it ties into, again, this is where I feel like they could have done more with it, is that emotional moment of Martian Manhunter thinking that he's helping his family, but then really having to fight against that, where they really could have done more of, Martian Manhunter seeing his family, believing that's true, and it's so real and so, wanting it to be true, and then ultimately they only win this battle because of his sheer willpower, which is kind of cool. It's not just a battle of punching. It is now Martian Manhunter, who became the threat to the Justice League, now is the only person that can stop himself, which I think is just a really kind of a clever kind of full circle and structures this story a little different than some of the past episodes that we've seen.
Isn't this kind of academic?
So for all those reasons, this episode falls at the number 2 spot of my favorite episodes so far. It's just below Legends. That episode, it's going to take a lot to knock that down because the nostalgia factor and just the fun of that episode is so front and center. But this episode is really strong. I think it's one of the best written story-wise, although I did have some concerns about it just could have been condensed, but it touches on the right elements and you kind of have to expound some of the rest. But I like the stories that involve using the characters against themselves, or those internal struggles, or something that's just more crafted than just a battle of fists, and incorporating magic and the Middle Ages. All of that just really lined up really well and made this episode at my number 2 spot. I do have it beating out The Enemy Below, which also kind of dealt with that emotional element. I'm seeing a theme of episodes that I like. When it ties into some emotional element, I get it's for kids, but I want to see, I think that what they did in Batman the Animated Series, sorry, I know bring that up a lot, but what they do with that is they tap into some of the emotion, human aspects. This is Martian, but you get the point. The Enemy Below did that really well, but again, this one was a threat deserving of the Justice League, which I really like about that. So as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please click the like button, click that subscribe button if you haven't already. We've got Metamorphosis coming up next, and that's the second to last episode of the second season, well, 2-parter of the first season. But as always, thank you so much for watching. This has been a long series to get through, not because there's so many episodes, just the volume of time that it's taking me to get through these, but we're moving right along. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.